comfort today in being together, in sharing together, and celebrating his life. My name is Ross Karkner, and until about 18 months ago, I served as pastor amongst the family here of Whitby Baptist Church. And it was through this community that my wife and I became best of friends with Bill's daughter Margie and her husband Ron. And through them came to know and love both Mr. Bill and Marion, and Kathy and Pete, and of course all their families. They have enriched our lives immeasurably. So it's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon to guide you through this time of memorial and celebration for the life of William George Irwin. To make you as comfortable as possible this afternoon, I want to point out to you that if for some reason it is required and we have to vacate this space very quickly, please do not use the elevator, but instead make use of the exit you might see here up on your left. You have to go down 5 steps that will lead you around a corner out to the front lawn, or go through the double doors at the back, go to your right, down 5 steps out to the front lawn, or go through the double doors to your left and go down 2 flights of stairs to the back parking lot. If in case of an emergency takes place, please make use of those exits. Once again, do not use the elevator. And if you find yourself in need of some assistance getting out, please wait where you are. We have some appointed individuals who will come to your aid and assist you in vacating the building. We trust that won't be necessary, but may that make you a little bit more comfortable in knowing. You also might like to know that there are washrooms through the double doors, up 3 steps, women on the right, men on the left, and also a fully accessible washroom just through the doors by the elevator on your left. Following our time of memorial and celebration, you are invited to a reception that will be taking place in this very room. And so that means that immediately following our service, we ask you to file out behind the family and make your way down to the lower auditorium for a short while, while we reconfigure this space and then call you back up for a time of reception together. So thank you for doing that and thinking about carefully vacating this space. Once again, if you have some mobility issues, feel free just to stay out here in the foyer and not make your way downstairs unnecessarily. And we thank you for your attention to these items, and I trust it'll make our afternoon much more enjoyable. I now call upon Marion to come forward and share a few thoughts and words of welcome to you all.
Where's the railing on these steps?
Right here, right here.
Thank you. Oh my, where to start? I'm so overwhelmed, and I know Bill would be too. Thank you all. This is amazing. I'm going to try not to cry. I've done most of my crying, I think, but I may weep a little bit. You'll forgive me. So, I've already said my first sentence here. So, it's just so lovely to see you all. And some of you I haven't seen for so long. That's been a real treat. Not that I'm not unhappy about seeing the rest of you, mind you. We even have friends here from out of country. You may have seen 2 fellows at the door when you came in dressed in skirts. Well, they've come all the way from Scotland because thanks to Rotary, we became friends with with Johnny, just one of them, parents, Edith and Ian McMillan, and that was back in 1981. And we've established the best friendship I've ever known, really, because they're so far away, but we've kept going back and forth. The next generations are intermingling, and Margie and Ron were over in Scotland last September. And look at these guys wanted to come over and bring their skirts with them. Thanks, guys, very much. We have Mayuko from Japan. She was one of our Rotary Club exchange students. We were one of her host families, and I FaceTimed with her to let her know that Bill had passed away, and the next day she phoned and said, I want to come. So she's come from Japan, and her daughter, Hannah, is here too from San Diego, where she lives and goes to school. Ludi, where are you, Ludi? I haven't, there's Ludi. Ludi and Mary Lou and Matthew, I haven't even talked to them yet. They're here from Chicago. They drove here yesterday? Yesterday. Thank you. Ludi's first wife, Nellie, was also, excuse me, my throat's dry, was a Rotary Exchange student as well, sort of, and used to come in the summertime, and sadly she passed away a few years ago, and but we've stayed in touch. They came out from France to live in Chicago and work here, and brought their kids were about like this when they came, and Mary Lou and Matthew are both adults now, looking after themselves, eh, Ludi? Yes. Yes, thank you. I forgot about water. Hi, guys. Maybe I don't want water. And then there is a chap here by the name of Dan. He's a university friend of Margie's. And I saw Margie talking to this guy last night, and I thought, who's that? And I knew Dan really well, because Margie brought them all up to the cottage in the summertime, and they never cleaned up after themselves. Anyway, Dan eventually came over right next to me, and I still didn't recognize him. Didn't I say to you, who are you? And the minute he started to talk, I knew who he was. So Dan, thank you for coming all the way from the Cayman Islands. So, and Mike's here from Florida, right? He's another one of the university group that gets together. Oh, Drew. I said out of country, so I'm okay. But I'll introduce you anyway. Drew is an Irwin, and he's a cousin of Bill's, and he lived with us for a little while, and then he went back and lived with his father. But he still comes and puts up with me when he comes every summer for a visit. Thanks, Drew, for coming very much. All right. I know that Bill would be, he wouldn't realize that he knew so many people, and he'd wonder why you were all here. Thank you ever so much for being here. It means a lot to me and to this guy, too. As most of you will know, Bill has had to face and deal with some health issues over the past 10 years. They've been very challenging for him, and they've slowly over the years gotten a little worse and so on, to the extent that in the last few months, I don't know, 2, 3, or 4 months, almost every day he would say to me, I don't want to be here anymore. So people ask me, how are you? I'm okay. I was Bill's primary caregiver, and I watched all this happen, and some of his other caregivers are here today, and we knew that time was passing pretty quickly now, and it was probably okay for him to leave us. But I still talk to him every day. I have him on my cell phone. I go to bed at night, and I look at him and say, hi, sweetie. Guess what I did today? And we'll just have a little talk with him. Makes me feel better. So, where am I now? Oh, I've done that part. So although I'm missing him very much, I am able to deal with his death by knowing that he has his wish of not being here anymore, and is in a better place now where he is free of all these health difficulties. Several months ago, when we were talking about age and death and funerals, Bill expressed a few wishes, which Kathy suggested that he put into her computer. He wanted to be cremated. He wanted to have his funeral here at Whitby Baptist Church, where our family attended for many years, as Ross told you. And he wanted to have Ross Kargner, a retired minister from the church, do his funeral service. You've already met him. And he wanted to have 2 pieces of special music music that he liked to be used in the service. So we're going to start the service with one of these pieces of music, Let There Be Peace on Earth, which is a song I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and the words of which meant a lot to Bill and fit in so well with his Rotary life. Cindy, you're here today? Cindy Campbell is a church friend, and she's going to lead us in the singing of this song. Are the words going up on the back? So there'll be words up here, and you have words in here, don't you? Yes, we have words in here. So Cindy, it's all yours.
We'd like to invite you to stand if you are able to join with us as we sing. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as our Father, brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Please be seated.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Adam, on the piano. Now I'll call upon Fred to come forward and share with us some thoughts and memories, perhaps, of Rotary.
I feel honored and privileged to be able to reflect on Bill's life as a Rotarian. Bill, also known as Mr. Rotary, joined the Rotary Club of Whitby on September 16th, 1967, at the young age of 26. I am sure he had lots of exposure to Rotary prior to joining. His father, Norman, was a charter member of the Whitby Club in 1933. Bill dug in his heels right away. A year after joining, he was elected to the board of directors, where he served as director until 1972, when he became the 40th president of the club. Over the 56 years of membership, Bill also served 9 years as treasurer, 5 years as secretary, and chaired numerous club committees. He was also active at the District 707 level, where he chaired the World Community Service Committee and served as the district governor's special advisor. He was appointed as a trustee to the Rotary Foundation Canada in 1999, and in 2007 carried on as the secretary of the committee which operates the Rotary Foundation Canada. Bill's efforts and contributions, quite often with Marion, Kathy, and Margie in tow, were particularly impactful in youth exchange, Easter seals, flipping Rhoda burgers and pancakes, and then there was Bill the Ripper, and Marion for that matter, and RIP stands for Rotary in Print, the West African Brace Project, AIDS Awareness, the Rotary Foundation, and Polio Plus, just to name a few. He used his engineering talent to help build the Santa Claus float. Bill was also an advocate for mental illness, having been challenged with clinical depressions for much of his life. He was quick to share his experiences. The Ontario Shores TAMI program, talking about mental illness, has been a focus of our club since its inception a number of years ago. In 1982, Bill was presented with the club's 7th Paul Harris Award. And here is what the club's history book says about his accomplishments. In his membership of over 15 years, Bill had served with dedication and distinction as president, as director, and had given inspired leadership to every major committee in the club. He had made particularly valuable contributions in devoting countless hours to the lengthy planning discussion and negotiations which had paved the way for both the senior citizens' housing development and the Rotary Centennial Park. In addition to his contribution to the life and work of our club, Bill had served as a valued member at the district level, chairing the committee established to oversee World Community Service, and also as a member of the Governor's Special Advisory Group. The proudest person in the hall on this special day was Bill's father, Norm. Bill received many additional Paul Harris Fellow recognitions since then, and was a major donor and benefactor to the Rotary Foundation. In 1995, Bill was awarded the Citation for Meritorious Service by the Rotary Foundation, which was in recognition of his tireless efforts to raise money for the Rotary Foundation over many years. The eradication of polio in this world was most important to Bill. Today, polio remains endemic only in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Bill is one of 20 Rotarians in our District 7070 to have received this citation since 1974. As you can tell, Bill was a most generous Rotarian to the Rotary Foundation and to our club's Neil Merker Charitable Foundation. He was an advocate for the Every Rotarian Every Year donations program. He understood the impact of the Rotary Foundation to help Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill, peace by improving health, providing quality education, improving the environment, and alleviating poverty. He and Marion traveled the world on their own expense to represent Rotary for the Braces for Africa project and several other causes. They made a point to stay in touch and to visit the many youth exchange students which they hosted over the years. Bill was not just generous with his money, he was most generous with sharing his time, vocation, and most importantly, his expertise and way of life in Rotary. He always kept a close eye on things and quickly offered his wisdom and services when needed. To keep us out of jail, he would jokingly claim. Bill always promoted service above self. One profits most who serves best. He lived by the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? He kept his priorities straight: family, work, Rotary, fun. And yes, fun was all part of it. When reading from Neil Merker's club history book, I came across an article in 1985 which makes reference to 24 members from Whitby attended a joint meeting with the Oshawa Parkwood Club at the Holiday Inn on February 25th. The program took the form of a joke contest as to who could tell the biggest lie. Bill Irwin carried the honors for Whitby. I wish I knew what he said. In 2001, our club organized a car rally. 25 cars signed up. Well, 24 cars and one 1945 Dodge weapons carrier truck operated by Bill Irwin. Grandchildren Kate and Jeff, as well as past President Barry Lennox, were brave enough to ride along. $18,000 was raised for Windreach Farms. There were many moments of fun-filled social interactions among Rotarians with Bill and Marion, including special time spent at their cottage. Becoming and being a Rotarian can sometimes be a little intimidating. You are among a unique group of people who are willing to share a piece of their lives for the betterment of our communities, local and abroad. I was fortunate to observe and to serve alongside Bill for many years. I'm convinced that Bill was the epitome of a special and great Rotarian. He was my mentor, and I'm forever grateful for the relationship and friendship we shared. As Bill started to lose his mobility and independence in recent years, he attended meetings whenever possible. Behind a successful and impactful Rotarian is a dedicated spouse and family. Marion has served Rotary as a Rotary spouse and as a member of our club for many, many years. I'm particularly thankful for Marion's tireless efforts to bring Bill out to any meetings at 7 a.m. in the morning or evenings and events over the last few years. Bill attended our annual general meeting and our Christmas party in the middle of December. Our members are so grateful that we were able to enjoy Bill's presence just a short time before his passing. Sadly, we can no longer call on Bill to feed off his wisdom and knowledge. The positive and lasting impact Bill had on so many Rotarians and friends of Rotary will no doubt help us to overcome his absence. He will certainly be missed. May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Fred, for sharing those insights that most of us wouldn't have had a look at if it wasn't for your sharing. Thank you very much. Now I'll call upon Kate Stevenson to come and share on behalf of the grandchildren. Are they all coming here? Yeah.
Taking my heels off so I don't fall over. There we go.
When she faints, that's why I'm
Yeah. Okay. Yes, bear with me. I'm quite nervous, but really felt it was important for us to share on behalf of the grandchildren. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Kate, and today I'm representing the grandchildren of our family. This includes my brother Jeff and our cousin Naomi, who lives in Kelowna. And we collaborated to share our thoughts and favorite memories of Papa. When thinking of what to say today, we were overwhelmed with all of our memories, ones that spoke to Papa's character, and others that demonstrated how much he enriched our lives growing up. It's hard to summarize a person that we love so much into one short speech, so we trust that our memories will complement and remind you of your own experiences of our Papa. As many of you know, Muskoka and our family cottage, Woodhaven, were an integral part of Papa's life, and many of our most significant memories are from the time we spent with him there. Here are a few of these memories. Naomi remembers Papa taking her golf ball hunting on foot across the golf course by Woodhaven. He would make sure milk bags were securely fastened on her feet with elastic bands, as the adventure would get muddy and would take them often directly into the creek. She remembers taking the golf balls back to the cottage and Papa helping her scrub them clean to perfection. All of this to support Naomi's early dream of becoming rich off of selling golf balls back to the golfers on the course. Jeff's fondest memories stem from Papa's willingness to take us on adventures in one of our many vehicles or boats. Growing up, it seemed like Papa could drive anything with ease. Whether he was taking our old Army Jeep into town, the one that Fred just referenced, into town to get candy, loaded with a dozen kids in the back, or driving the Beaver, our wooden boat, to get ice cream across the lake. He was always willing to take us for rides and turn any ordinary afternoon into an adventure. One of my favorite memories, which I'm sure I share with many of you, is of him driving the ski boat for hours on end each summer day. He would ensure that everyone on the dock had a turn to try whichever water skiing or tubing activity they desired. It seemed like he would never say no if someone wanted just one last turn to try slalom or barefoot or whatever the activity may be. He was extremely patient, allowing new water skiers every chance they could muster to master the skill. And he was very generous with his time and the boat gasoline. Away from the cottage, Papa was a hands-on grandparent. Growing up, he was very involved in each of our lives, attending school sports games, music concerts, driving us to appointments, and picking us up from school. It was important to him to get to know our friends by name, treating them like one of the family. For Naomi, who lived in Toronto, he made a point to visit every time he was in the city. And for Jeff and I in Whitby, he would often stop into our house unannounced for a quick hug and hello. We always knew that Nernie and Papa were not far away. Naomi, Jeff, and I have fond memories of hours spent with Papa in his workshop, helping him with woodworking projects or watching as he skillfully fixed whatever broken item we brought to him. It seemed like he could fix anything and always had just the right oddball screw or bolt to do the job. One summer when I was young, I had the idea to build a jewelry stand. Asking Papa if he would help me, we spent days in the workshop, cutting piece by piece, as he taught me how to use the table saw without cutting my fingers off, and showing me how to sand the edges down so they were smooth. He took it upon himself to make my idea really come to life, and I remember feeling very special and cherished our time together. He always took time for the little things that would put a smile on our faces. When out for a beaver ride, he knew just the right spot in the lake to drive the boat in front of the cottage so that his passengers would see their reflection in the big mirror in the living room. And what a thrill that was. During big storms, he would fashion 2 dining room chairs back to back in front of the big window at the cottage, resting a broomstick horizontally across them with the end of the broom touching the glass of the window. He would patiently watch with us as the wind blew and the glass flexed, pushing the end of the broom, showing us just how much the window moved in the storm. Even when something was out of his comfort zone, he made an effort to connect with us. When Naomi was in her Webkins phase growing up, Papa bought his own Webkins, which is a stuffed animal that has a matching online character. Knowing how important they were to her, he diligently played online to get high scores for Naomi to beat. He loved a good joke or word pun and would recite his signature sayings like, "I will remain flexible to take advantages of opportunities as they arise," or "I am sufficiently sophancified." And our favorite question, "How long is a piece of string?" For those of you wondering, Naomi and Papa settled on the answer to that last question being, the length of a piece of string is twice the length from the center to one end. He was gentle and understanding, often not being fazed by whatever mischief we'd get into, even if it was flipping the golf cart off of the deck. Jeff? Or when I would repeatedly stall his stick shift car in the middle of a busy intersection. He calmly dealt with the issue and helped us out of the situation. Papa wasn't afraid to share his emotions. He would often get teary expressing how beautiful he thought something was, or when he appreciated something, or when telling us that he loved us. Not only was Papa an amazing grandfather to us, he was an incredible man to many other people. He cared deeply about others and had a knack for connecting with anyone by taking an interest in what was important to them. Jeff and I remember being out around town with Papa, and he would more often than not run into someone that he knew, greeting them with a friendly hello and handshake. These interactions made us feel proud to have him as our grandfather. No matter the situation, he made sure people feel welcomed and comfortable. He was generous with his time and resources and was an incredible role model to us. So after reflecting on all of these memories, 3 characteristics really stood out to us. We will always remember Papa for his generosity, patience, and kindness. We're so thankful for all of the memories we have and the lessons that he taught us. We will think of him every time a rope needs splicing together, whenever we see a classic car, or when we crack open a cold bottle of Muskoka Dry. We love you, Papa. Thank you. I'm good.
We invite you again to stand with us if you are able as we sing How Great Thou Art.
O Lord my God, is played. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When through the woods and forest glades I wander and hear the birds sing sweetly in the trees. When I look down from lofty mountain grandeur and see the brook and feel the gentle breeze, then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. And when I think that God his Son not sparing sent him to die, I scarce can take it in, that on the cross my burden gladly bearing, he bled and died to take away my sin. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art.
Please be seated.
Now call upon brother-in-law John to come forward and share with us again some insights from the family.
Well, I guess you all know who I am now, so. Don't tell me to speak up this time. So, I think back, and I probably, looking around this room, knew Bill longer than anyone else other than Marion. And Bill got a farm driver's license when he was 14, so he could drive himself to school. And don't correct me on any of this, Marion. So, and then he started to appear at our house. And then things developed from there. But he came to my 10th birthday party. That's what I remember. So I've really known him since I was 10 years old. And so that is 71 years for anyone that wants to know. And I think what I will talk about here is kind of my experiences with Bill through from 10 years old till about, I was 22 or 23 and really moved away from Whitby. And when I was 10, I was really into cowboys and westerns, and I still like Western art. And he came to my birthday party, and I got a pair of Gene Autry spurs. And I didn't have any cowboy boots, but I put them on my rubber boots, and kids then played cowboys and Indians, and we had cap guns and things, and I'd run around those boots with the spurs. And so I'll always, I may not remember something from 2 weeks ago, but I'll always remember those spurs. And then, let's see, I've got notes here. So then, if you knew Bill back then, he loved cars. And his uncle Paul, I think it was a salesman for a Mercury dealer. And in 1956, Bill was 16. And all of a sudden, this 1956 dark blue Mercury convertible showed up in front of our house. And there wasn't another car like that. And that car he kept 1 year. In 1957, there was a 1957 Mercury Montclair. And he started to accessorize these cars. He put a Continental kit on that. And he had these long cruiser fender skirts. And that car was about 20 feet long. And it was just, so he kept that car 1 year. And then in 1958, he got what I call the Hollywood car. And it was a 1958 Pontiac Parisienne convertible. It was snow white with a snow white top, red leather interior, and he put a Continental kit on that. So it also was about 20 feet long. But he also put Hollywood mufflers on it. And I think our dad hated that car. Because, Dad could hear him coming, and he could hear him leaving, and sometimes he was leaving late at night. And it was just, but that car, there was not another car like that one in the whole area. It was just really magnificent. And he only kept that car 2 years. And then he got what I call the quietly elegant car, which is the 60 Parisienne convertible, which Jeffrey now has. And it's nestled up in Muskoka. And so that car is it's perfect. And I'm going to only discuss one more car, and that's the 1937 Buick. And I don't know, some people here will know, but in Canada, up till about 1953, the Buicks were manufactured under license from General Motors in the US, and they were McLaughlin Buicks in Canada. And our grandparents, Marion Margs and my grandparents, were friends with the McLaughlins. And we were told our grandfather bought this car from Mr. McLaughlin, Bill's grandfather. And let's see, I think I was about 17, so somewhere around 1959. And Marion, I think, was just starting to teach, and so she needed a car. So we got our father to talk to our grandfather, and we got the car. And it hadn't run for about 10 years. So we're debating what we're going to do and everything. And Bill shows up with a new battery for that car, and we pushed it out of the garage in Oshawa and put the battery in it, and that car just started up. So anyhow, but the ending, we drove it, I drove it, Marion paid for it, and so the second year, I took it back to Queens for my second year, and I was involved in an accident with it, so the car came back to Whitby, and it got sold, and then a couple of years later, it was sold to some people that restored it a bit, and Bill bought it back from those people for a surprise gift for Marion for Christmas. And then Jeff and Ron got their hands on it. and it's mechanically, it's been restored to better than new. So it's up there beside the Pontiac. So that's all I'm going to talk about cars. But I had a couple of firsts with Bill. One day he showed up, I don't know, maybe I was 15, but he came over, it was winter, and he said, "Do you want to go skiing?" And I'd never skied, and there's a place northeast of Oshawa, Dagmar, and they had a little rope tow or something, so he said, "Let's go." So over we go, but it wasn't open, and but the hill was there, so, and these were these old wooden skis. They had little rectangular tips on the front, and they had these bindings. I think they called them bear trap bindings because they wouldn't release if you fell. So the rope tow wasn't working, but we climbed to the top of the hill and put these skis on. And I don't think either one of us could turn, but, and so it was like having two long, narrow toboggans on the bottom of your feet. And down, we never turned, we just straight down. And that, I don't know how much longer he skied, but anyhow, that was my first and only skiing experience for a long time. And the other time, the other first with Bill, when he was 18, Mr. Irwin had a seaplane up in Muskoka. And I think when he's 18, Bill got a pilot's license. And I remember one afternoon, it was summer, and I was doing something with our mother out in the backyard, and all of a sudden Bill appears in the backyard and says, "Where's Marion?" And Mom said, "Well, she's out with some of her friends." So he looked at me and said, "Do you want to go flying?" And I said, "Gee, I don't know." And I looked at Mom, and you know, here's a pilot, he's 18 years old. But Mom, I don't think she ever said no to Bill in her life. And so sure, I could go flying, but she didn't ask how many hours he had or what kind of plane it was or anything. So we drive over to the Oshawa Flying Club, and he's rented a little plane, two-seater. He was in front, I was in back, and up we go. And it was, you know, I just knew he could do it. And Mr. Irwin would have made sure he knew how to fly, so there wasn't really any risk. But to see Whitby the way it was back then, the fields and the lake, and we flew over the house, and so that was a first for me to, you know, I could come back and say, "Oh, gee, I went flying." And and then one other time where flying was involved, I was also a graduate of the Woodhaven Water Ski School. And so one afternoon, we'd been water skiing, and we'd lost a dock bumper off the Beaver. And so Bill gets the seaplane out, and 2 or 3 of us get in the plane, and we go up to look for the bumper, but which was impossible to see because it wasn't very big, but I think he wanted to go up and get some hours on the seaplanes. But I'll tell you, to see Lake Rosso from the air is really spectacular. So that's, oh, I did see a couple of things where Bill, probably the only time that he didn't finish something he started, but when he had that 58 Pontiac convertible, he and his cousin Doug decided they were going to make a fiberglass hardtop for it. And one day I was out at Woodhaven. They had a really big garage. And in one of the bays of the garage, there was like this 8-foot by 8-foot square. And inside it, they'd built this plaster mold. And they were going to lay down fiberglass and make a top for the Parisienne, but that never got finished, and I suspect Mr. and Mrs. Irwin said they wanted their garage back, but so it's, but he was really good. Like if he started to do something and it was structural or mechanical or something, he could do it. And so that's what's next. Oh, this is getting later on in my life, where later on in my life, I think I was 22. So anyhow, I'd finished at Queens, and 2 friends, one another from Queens and one from Western. We were all starting work in Toronto. And we had rented an apartment in Toronto, and we had some furniture we had to get there, and how are we going to get it there? And there's a Red Wing Orchards Volkswagen van, and Bill's there, and we load that van up, and we moved it all to Toronto. It was just, you know, he was always there when you needed him. And so I'm winding down here, but two months ago I flew up here to see Marion to surprise her for her 85th birthday. You know, and you could tell Bill really wasn't doing very well. And the girls had planned a luncheon at Taunton Mills. But the day before we had that luncheon, Marion wanted to take Bill for a drive. And would I go along? And I said, sure. So Marion's driving, and she tours us around down by the lake, and then around by where Dunlop Rubber used to be, and then we went out, and we ended up going out, I don't know which road it was, but we ended up out by Brooklyn and coming back. And Bill was talking about, you know, the development of Whitby and the work he had done for the town, and our father, who could be a difficult man at times, at one time had been the city lawyer for Oshawa. And so Dad understood municipal law. And Bill was very complimentary. He said that, you know, Dad had helped him when Bill started, because if there was something he didn't understand, Dad would explain the law to him, and why it did what it did and how it worked the way he did. So I'll always choose to remember Bill from that day. And in closing, there's an old expression, and I don't know where I read it or heard it, but it goes, for those to whom much is given, much is expected. And I always think of Marion and Bill as a team. And Bill lived that. He knew he had been very well off, and he gave back. And he helped family, he helped friends, he helped the town, and through Rotary and that, he reached out to help a lot of people. So I'll always remember him. That's it.
Please do. Thank you, John, for sharing those insights from the family. I also want to say I think you're lucky to be alive. Yes. That's the two of you there? Marion, come forward, would you? I waited for you to sit down, yeah. It's your turn.
Thank you. All right. I read this piece of scripture at my mother's funeral, and for some reason, this one, I think, just speaks so much about us, even now, today. Ecclesiastes 3, 1-13. A time for everything, and it's in a more modern version than the St. James. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather those stones up again, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away when you move a lot, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. I understand that the book of Ecclesiastes was written by Solomon, and he goes on to say, what do people really get for all their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all, yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from the beginning to the end. So I concluded there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are the gifts from God. Thank you.
It's a wonderful reading, isn't it? Very poetic, very reflective. It's got that ability to make us smile and frown almost at the same time. It speaks powerfully to us today as the author, King Solomon, seeks to grapple with the meaning of life. What's it all about anyway? And so he concludes, as Marion just read, that everything has its place. Everything, even today. There's a time for everything, he says. A season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. There is a time to die, but more importantly at this second, there is a time to be born. Mr. Bill anticipated the birth of his first grandchild with great anticipation, a sense of hope and joy. The birth of Sophie has been nothing but joyful and life-affirming and life-giving. That's the nature of birth in life. It's also very exciting, and there's a time to be born, Solomon says. And then he punctuates that with the counterphrase, then there's a time to die. And that's why we're here today. Our much-loved Mr. Bill, husband, father, father-in-law, grandfather, great-grandfather, brother-in-law, uncle, and friend, so many, is dead. How did we get here? How did this happen also very quickly, it seems? We don't like it. But this is part of life for us too, isn't it? There's a time to be born and there's also a time to die. And as Marion read the next 6 verses and go through this contrast back and forth, and so we see love and hate and scattering and gathering and tearing and mending and weeping and laughter. And then in verse 11 he says, God has made everything beautiful in its time. that in the midst of these opposites, these counterbalances, this seesawing back and forth, we can see that God has appointed everything to its season. And these seasons, they come and they go. Isn't it true? The older we get, the faster the seasons come and go. And where does this leave us? And so he concludes that there's more to life than these opposites, more to life than this seesawing back and forth, more to life than the bracketing of sunrises and sunsets. He says, for God has placed eternity within the human heart. He says, despite these bracketed sets and the passing of seasons, there is something more, and it's inside of us. It's inside of us, aching to come out, aching for us to realize it. And I think we can see this in our lives. We have this natural thirst for more. We want more. More of what we have. And some things we don't have, we'd like to have more of that. Desire within us for more. And God has placed this eternal longing within us. We have eternity in our lives, this innate knowledge that there's got to be something still to be had beyond this when it's all over. I think it's true that every generation feels that they've pretty much tapped out all there is in life. This is it. I've got it all. It doesn't get any better than this. And you know, this idea has been around for hundreds of years. And I like this story. I want to share it with you. It goes back to the Spanish in the 1400s. And in the 1400s, they were an exploring, conquering people. They felt they had been everywhere in the world. And that they had seen everything, they knew everything, and they had everything. And as a matter of fact, they were so sure that their national motto was 3 simple words: no more beyond. We've seen it all. There ain't no more. There ain't no more. Until, of course, a young man, or youngish man, by the name of Christopher Columbus, began to implore kings in the region to go and explore further. And wouldn't you know, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and he tripped over North America. Oops. There's more. There's more beyond. So, a dozen or so more years later, in about 1506, when Columbus died, the people in Spain erected a monument in his honor. It's quite a high statue with a statue of himself at the very top of this tall obelisk kind of affair. But at the bottom, there is a lion. There's a lion stretching up on its rear haunches, extending right paw, and it's up there reaching up toward the national motto, no more beyond. And in his claws, he's captured the word no and ripped it from the motto. Now simply means more beyond. More beyond. It takes a sense of national humility to recognize that your reason for being was wrong for decades. In a statue to Columbus, which I understand still stands today, you can see it there. 2 words now. Rest more beyond. When there is something within us that says there must be more, there is a searching deep in our hearts that leads to more discovery, perhaps to more adventure. And in the path of discovering, some things become evident. Character becomes critical in the searching. Now, we all could say that Mr. Bill was quite a character. There's no debate. But there's also no debate that he was a man of sound character, of deep abiding character, and character emerged from him over his years of discovering. And his character became a force, and as we watched, fellowship in his life became essential. Generosity became irresistible. Hospitality became undeniable. He could not help himself but do these things. And I believe because within him there was something calling him, saying, there's more. There's more. Here. Find it, Bill. How many of us really got to know Mr. Bill through the hospitality of the home that he and Marion built? Or through Woodhaven? Do you dare to raise your hand? I'd just be interested to see. Woodhaven or 333 or wherever else you may have been. Hospitality, generosity, fellowship, friendship. He couldn't help himself. And you know, in all humility, as I spoke with him and got to know him over the years, none of these things did he store up and said to himself even, look at all the good that I've done. He never did that. He did it. And I believe he did it because he felt it was right. Very much like his Rotary, he did it because it was right. It's the right thing to do. As part of his discovery to say, how do I find this more? This more. Mr. Bill was not a religious man. Many of you would know that. But he was a spiritual man. He was a spiritual man. In quiet conversations, he find it hard oftentimes to allow the more beyond idea to get a hold of him. He did struggle against that. And we would talk. He would say that his engineering mind would get in the way. His logical, engineering, mathematical mind would not allow him to go there. I remember one time in one of our conversations, he said to me, you know, Ross, Rotary is my church. You know, I like that. I like that. And you could look at his life in Rotary that's been shared. And it provided for him an outlet, did it not? In this constant discovering about how was there going to be more in this life. And so it's within Rotary that he found a place to give and to serve and to travel and to visit and to see. And the more he saw, the more he wept. He wept in tears of sorrow for the things that he saw. And then when he looked at the things that could be done, he wept with tears of joy. I still remember him telling me about the experience, and I don't remember the country. Something tells me it was Kenya, and came across a young boy, either with wheelchair or it was a leg appliance, and the young boy spoke with Mr. Bill and said, I have this because of Rotary. And he couldn't tell me the story without tears coming down his cheeks. You see that? Weeping with joy. He gave, he served. And so these things, I say not to suggest that Mr. Bill was perfect. If he were here today and heard anyone say that, he would laugh you out of the room. Or he would cry out loud at your misunderstanding. He wasn't perfect. But I do believe these things showed that throughout his life, there was this constant stretching and reaching. Isn't the same sort of figure of Columbus's lion, to reach out and pluck that no, to pluck it out and say there's more beyond. That life-altering truth that still was somewhere within him that was propelling him forward. The last time I spoke with Mr. Bill, life was short. And I think he knew it. He must have known it. And the worldview of the engineer that had given him such confidence in all our previous conversations was now gone. Now gone. And I could see it. And in the calm, interspersed with brief moments of passing agitation, such as the nature of life ebbing from our bodies. Our conversation was different, and now there was a desperate need within him to experience the more he had been grasping for, a hungering for peace. I reassured him that the more beyond was based not on anything that we have done, but based only on what God has done through Christ. That it's his goodness and his good works in our life that makes all the difference. And I told him, I have a verse in the Bible I want to share with you, Mr. Bill. And I said, you'll know it. He said, no, I don't think so. See, I don't think so. See, he wasn't a religious man. But I began the verse anyway. And I said, for God so loved the world. And you know what? He joined me. And together we said that he gave his one and only Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. No greater antidote in life for fear than embracing the reality of an eternity that's been placed in our hearts. Seek out God, that there is more. And on that day, after all the conversations that we had had, and whom my predecessor in this church, Pastor Henry Dick, had with him, and who knows how many others, on this day, it was different. On this day, it was different. This verse unlocked the truth for Mr. Bill, that he'd only a short time later, there alone with his daughter, Margie, whom the two of them had been praying together off and on at his request for many weeks at this point, prayed. And Mr. Bill in those moments sought out God and said that he believed, that he wanted the more, that he trusted and he needed Christ in his life to lead him into the fullest realization of this eternity that had been planted in his heart. So when we hear these words today, perhaps it strikes a different meaning for me, or maybe it does for you now as you hear this account, that there is indeed a time for everything. There is a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, yes, and a time to die. A time to weep, yes, but a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. Today we celebrate the life of William, George, Irwin, Bill, Mr. Bill, with tears, yes, but with laughter. We've already shared it today. With heavy hearts, yes, but also with a dancing sense of joy. For God has placed eternity in the human heart. Quest for searching for more is over in God's presence. Now call upon Kathy and Margie, Mr. Bill's daughters, to come forth and share with us some family remembrances.
And Vanna and Lana, please. I promise you we're getting super close to being done. And this is the tough part because everybody said everything we wanted to say. But over to you.
Kind of. Yeah. So we have spent time today talking about and listening to remembrances of our dad, a man who meant so much, of course, to us. Dad, Bill, Papa, Uncle Bill, and to many, as it's already been said, Mr. Bill. We wanted to just point out that this nickname caught on for Dad, the Mr. Bill nickname, that is, caught on for Dad in the 80s and was prompted by the Saturday Night Live's "Oh no, it's Mr. Bill." Do you remember that comedy sketch? It was about a small plasticine man who continually got squished, and we're thankful that that part wasn't true for Dad, that it was only the nickname that stuck. Dad was a sensitive man. We loved that about him, and that sensitivity rang through loud and clear as he interacted with people in his law firm, throughout the community, and of course in our home. You have already heard about his love of Rotary, but that relationship, we do want to point out, was reciprocal. He gave a lot through Rotary, but Rotary also gave a lot to him, and he would talk about that all the time. For Kathy and me, we always knew Dad loved us, as he showed us in very practical ways. Dad was always very good at entertaining young kids, even when there were no toys in the room. He always seemed to find some item or distraction or game to play, and his patience was endless. Kathy and I fondly remember a game that Dad invented when we were quite young. I think he came up with the name. I don't remember. He called it Blorp. B-L-O-R-P. Dad would sit on the floor, and for those of you at the back who can't see, Kathy's around later for further demonstrations of this. He would sit on the floor with his head down, waiting for us to run by. And as we did so, Dad would reach out his arms and say, and try to grab us. Of course, we would squeal with delight, Kathy a little bit more than me, because I was the timid one. And we would only go close enough for him to grab us if we actually wanted him to.
So another quick example of his patience, because I don't know how he sat on the floor and said blorp for so long, was the washcloth tussle. Now, every day when we lived at 301, so I would have been about 7 or 8, Dad would have his morning shower, and he'd do his he'd do whatever he was doing in the shower, and he would wring his washcloth out, and he'd throw it out with the shower curtain still closed, and it would land in the sink, never in the toilet, and it would always land in the sink. So I caught on, and I would sneak into the bathroom. And I would get the washcloth out of the sink and throw it back. And then he'd throw it back over. And then I'd do it again. I mean, I don't know how he didn't totally lose it when I think about myself getting ready with that washcloth going back and forth. And he always pretended that he had no idea I was in the bathroom throwing the washcloth back over. His patience went beyond...
Okay. Give me the washcloth.
His patience went beyond just the young kid stuff. We heard a lot about driving, cars, all of that stuff. Think about the patience it takes to teach kids to drive, which he did with all of us, to then teach us to drive a standard transmission up hills, and then to teach us how to get out of snow. And Dad loved nothing more than driving in the snow, and he would literally go out on purpose to get stuck. And so I can remember hours of fun, literally, I love this, in the Wilco parking lot when it wasn't plowed, practicing skids. There was an unassumed subdivision. It had the roads, but no houses, tons of snow. You'd go out there and get stuck on purpose to get out. And then hours up and down the orchard lane with all the snow there. And I'm pretty convinced that that's how I nailed this guy here when I managed, to his shock and awe, when he was my new boyfriend, to back out his Skyhawk with a really tough clutch out of the snow while he pushed. I nailed it on that one. One of the things that we know is supposed to be quite hard for dads of daughters is when the guys come around. And I would say that's something that Dad was always really great at. Maybe it was harder for moms of daughters in our household, I don't know. He just welcomed our gentlemen with open arms, and I think both Pete and Ron, he loved them like sons, and they came to love him like their own dads as well. We talked a bit today about Dad's ongoing challenges with depression. I think many of you know about that, but I just want to touch on it because it was around for almost as long as I can remember. And I think, much to Mom's credit, she helped him recognize what he was dealing with, go and speak to psychiatrists and therapists, and actually get medication. And I mean, for many of you who are younger than some of us, you're thinking, what's the big deal? Mental health is a topic we all talk about now. It's something that's so important. This was 50 years ago. You didn't talk about depression. And so again, with Mom's encouragement, Dad did start, I think Fred mentioned it, to go out and talk about individually or in groups his depression, what it meant, some of the myths about it, try to help other people deal with it, and really understand that it's an illness or a challenge just like diabetes or heart disease or any of those things.
Ultimately, his depression, combined with all sorts of physical issues, made Dad's life incredibly challenging, as has been said already. He struggled then with also pain, mobility, vision, and cognition. In the latter years, he struggled to find meaning and quality, and his quality of life declined significantly. It is here that we have to point out the profound impact that Mom had on his life. She was committed to making his day-to-day experiences as fulfilling, comfortable, and happy as possible. And she tackled this both as a deeply loving and dedicated wife and as a very accomplished and professional caregiver. We used to always tell her it was too much, but I guess hindsight's 20/20, and she really did allow him the dignity to be with her until pretty much the end. So it is thanks to Mom and also to Dad's absolutely wonderful PSWs, Jane, Merzad and Nadia, Miriam and Jackie. Thanks to all of those people that Dad was able to live with dignity and relative independence right up until the end. And that end came after 11 days in Lakeridge Health, Oshawa, where we also have to mention he received wonderful care. Though he was not fully aware of what was happening, when we shifted to comfort care, we think that he was ready and he made his choice. And that choice was to let go. We were all around his bedside when he died, and that was really special. I hope it was special for Dad. It certainly was special for us. So while the last few years are perhaps not the happiest to remember for Dad, we choose to focus on the other 80 plus. We choose to remember Dad not in the hospital, but instead, we choose to remember him at the cottage, water skiing, with his Tilly hat on, never getting wet, from jump start off the dock to landing back up onto the dock, and some of you may have been the recipient of this part, soaking his uninitiated guests by spraying a wall of water on the dock as he passed.
We choose to remember Dad with his cars, the 67 Firebird that had the clutch like a tractor and 3 speeds on the floor, the 60 Pontiac, the 37 McLaughlin Buick, and Ethel, the Army Jeep that's already been mentioned, plus so many others.
We choose to remember Dad living long enough to welcome his first great-grandchild, the tiny, perfect, and beautiful Sophie Olivia Stevenson.
We also choose to remember Dad, as I think the grandkids suggested, as the guy who had a creative solution to everything, even if it meant a pot hanging from the ceiling at the cottage with the "Dare You Ask" sign. You remember?
We can tell you what that was for later if you want.
Actually, I don't know if we really know.
Oh, it was a drip or something, yes. We choose to remember Dad as one half of the dynamic duo that was Marion and Bill Irwin. The two of them brought such different yet complementary strengths together that they were unstoppable when they tackled a cause. From moving the Whitby station to create a home for Whitby Arts, to sending wheelchairs to Africa for polio victims, to hosting over 20 exchange students, and as has already been mentioned, one of whom is here today from Japan.
We choose to remember Dad coming home for lunch every day from the office and watching the Flintstones with us, and then yabba dabba doo, jumping back in his car to go back to work.
We choose to remember Dad patiently fixing the ski ropes and finding enough water skis so that he could pill 5, that was you and your friends, I think, 5 people behind the old wooden beaver boat.
We choose to remember his antics on the disc, from just spinning around and being crazy on it, to actually grabbing a kitchen chair, stepping up on it, and getting pulled. He's a wuss. Getting pulled around the lake.
Most of all, we choose to remember how much Dad loved us, how much he loved his family, and how much he loved Mom, and how much we all loved him. He richly blessed our lives. Sorry.
Why?
Well, I just thought I'd make you cry or something.
No, How Great Thou Art did that to me. We missed Dad already. In fact, I think that I maybe started to miss him over the last few years as the dad whom we really knew started to slip away. He just taught us so much on so many levels, and I think now, as much as it's really sad and there is grief, we're happy that he's at peace and hopefully back on that big water ski in the sky. So with that, I need to do the closing, right? No, Ross is doing a prayer, right?
Thank you, Kathy and Margie, for sharing so many picturesque moments and memories. Word pictures. Word pictures. Let's pray, shall we? Our Father and our God, we thank you. We thank you for this gift of life and all the mysteries it seems to contain, and from beginning to end. For the relationships, for the people that cross our paths, that make the journey that we're on just really worth the living. And so we thank you. We thank you for the gift of time and relationship and love shared with one man, Mr. Bill. In the silence of our own hearts, we bring before you our own feelings of that connection that we have with him. We're thankful, O God, for his character, for the kind of man that he was, for his honesty and his transparency, for his eagerness to help, for his desire to make a difference. For his generosity of time and of spirit, for the laughter and the smiles and the encouragement. Oh God, those who know him and loved him best are already missing him. May they experience your comfort directly by your supernatural means, and the comfort that comes from the love of friends and the warm embrace, a hug of friendship. And we thank you for the gift of Christ, for the hope that it brings to all of us, for the gift waiting for all of us, beginning with the eternity planted within, that sense of eternity, desire to reach out for more. In these coming days and weeks, may we continue to support each other, bring each other good news of friendship, and reach out to those who struggle. We can do this in the memory of Mr. Bill, and we can do it in the name of Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen. Yes, now we call upon the Irwin women to come forward.
So we are really literally almost done. We want to thank everybody for coming. It is pretty overwhelming to see so many wonderful faces. Thank you for all your support, the offers of help, the notes, the comments, the hugs, the friendship. Frankly, always, not just when it's been tough in the last couple of weeks. So really appreciate that. Also really want to say a special thank you to a number of folks who have helped to orchestrate today, organize the church, set up, tear down, food that you're going to see soon. I'm not going to name names because I will invariably miss them, but we really appreciate that and couldn't have done it without others. So, true Irwin family fashion, there is a party or a celebration or a social thing after this. And there are some logistics involved, which means there are some things we have to ask you to do. I'm going to repeat kind of what Ross said. We're going to have the social time here. It is meant to be fun. Dad would want us to be having some fun and getting together and connecting. So it's going to be here, but we need to move the chairs out. So what we're going to ask everybody to do at the end of the song, as we leave the sanctuary, please leave as well. Go downstairs to the lower auditorium, also known as gym. And if you are not comfortable with stairs, just stay out in the foyer. We'll get this place turned around faster than Air Canada can do a flight. And then we'll get you all back up here as soon as possible.
And there are lots of picture boards to have a peek at downstairs too, so enjoy those while you're there.
Yeah, see if you can find yourself. And with that, I think we will let Mum wrap up. I never like to not let her have the last word.
Raised well, weren't they? I want to do my own personal thanks to my two girls. I have done very, very little in organizing Bill's funeral. They have done so much. They've included me in everything. Mom, what do you think if we do this? Are we okay if we do that? And so on. They gave me my orders. You talk to people. You do the phone calling. You be ready to come at such and such a time. I was actually on time today.
You were.
And so I appreciate my daughters very, very much. I appreciate my whole family, my brother coming to say, because I remember Bill and Johnny and those things that he talked about. The flowers that you see have been put together by granddaughter Katie. She loves arranging flowers, and I think you'll agree that they're very beautifully done. Bill's right there in that box. And it's a beautiful box. Caleb, Katie's husband, has some carpentry skills, and we asked him if he would make an urn for Papa for his ashes, rather than paying the horrendous cost that you pay for them elsewhere. Also, it was to be made from Muskoka pine. Bill used to love working with Muskoka pine and over the years. And so Caleb has done that. He's made it with Muskoka pine. I almost cried when I saw it because I think it's beautiful. He's also going to make a second box. That's for me. When the time comes. And the girls can put me inside the box, and then they can take the two boxes and bury us together. I'm going to keep Bill with me until I die. I don't know how long that'll be. I've warned everybody I'm going to live another 5 years anyway. So to all my family who've helped put this together, and thank you, Sophie, for coming and being such a good girl. Yeah. And Ross, where's Ross?
Right here.
Right here.
Oh, you're about to get
You
in trouble.
forgot the great, again,
Did I
the
forget?
great daughter.
You said the granddaughter, the birth
You
of the
just said
granddaughter.
There you go. Well, you know.
Ross,
Not perfect either.
Ross said a lovely prayer when Bill was dying at the hospital, and he forgot the great then, so I gave him a poke and said, great granddaughter. And she is lovely and sweet. Just have a little peek at her later. She's great. Anyway, okay, let's go on here. One of Bill's wishes was to have his funeral service close with a special song of goodbye, and I'm going to tell you why. Bill's mom, affectionately called Grandma by us all, was challenged by the cold in her elder years. So Bill's dad, Grandpa, as we called him, sought to do something about that by taking her to a warmer climate from January to March. Not to the usual Florida, where everybody goes from here usually, but to the farther away and more unknown Hawaii. Bill, Kathy, Margie, and I were lucky enough to be able to visit Grandma and Grandpa there a few times over the years during the school's spring break week. After our dinners there, we would go to the Polynesian show held in the same hotel where we stayed. This beautiful show was created and organized by Victor and Ku'ulei Panua. At the end of their show, Victor sang a beautifully poignant goodbye song accompanied by graceful hula dancers. I played the piano. Bill loved piano music, and so I used to sit and play for him at times. And the melody of this was easy enough for me to pick it up by ear. Like lots of melodies are too hard for me to do that, so I didn't really need the music. And Bill would always know when I finished my little playing for him, because I would play the goodbye song for him. So he wanted that for the end of his funeral service. Now, we are not going to make you sing this or stand. You may sit, but rather we ask you to please sit and listen to the words and know that this is how Bill wanted to say his own special goodbye to all of us. To all of us, that's what I'm trying to say. So,
fine.
thank you.
Are you adding anything else? Because that's all that's on the page.
Well, I could think of some things if you want me to.
Now we go sit down.
Oh, I
We're
just-
done.
Goodbye, goodbye. Oh, why must we say goodbye? I've heard that word in many lands. Que ora tatua, the Polynesians say. Farewell, dear friends, we'll meet another day. From far Japan, sayonara, they cry. I wish they didn't mean goodbye. I hear of war and long for Italy. In Rome, arrivederci, they fondly say to me, as I sail from fair Hawaii, I hear aloha away. I wish they didn't mean goodbye. As I leave London town, I hear their cheerios. In Spain, hasta mañana,